Hi, everyone. My name is Ethan. I'm an intern here with Sports Philanthropy Network. And I'm excited for you all to join our mental health panel on the health and safety track. And I'm going to hand it over to Kayla to moderate and get it started.
Thank you so much, Ethan. I appreciate you. I'm excited to be here today with Diana, Tyree, Reggie. Thank you guys for being here, for sharing your story. I want to invite our participants to please use the chat. Ask Tyree, Reggie, Diana your questions, offer your comments. We will be moderating the chats, each of us, and have our eyes on them to respond to you. What I'd like to do, if you guys don't mind, is start by sharing your story, at least why you're here today, what qualifies you to speak on the mental health track. Reggie, if you don't mind, we'll start with you.
Okay, I guess what qualifies me? Well, I am a mental, physical, and sexual abuse survivor. I'm a former NFL athlete of 7 years. I've done 2 treatment center stays. Currently, I've been diagnosed with being bipolar, other specified, as well as anxiety and depression. I take medication for that. I am very outspoken on the need for just athletes and mental health, and really making sure that you monitor that as you go through the very toxic, stressful situation that they go through. But yeah, I have a lot of experience in this area.
Thank you, Reggie. Tyree?
Yeah, my experience comes, personally, just I've come from a family where there's a lot of mental health issues. And for one, I have a sister that's serving 25 to life right now in Chowchilla State Penitentiary for murder. She's recently, the state is gonna send her to a mental facility out in San Bernardino, California. As a young boy, I've witnessed a lot of domestic violence, a lot of drugs, been involved in the gangs myself personally, and just being a former NFL athlete as well, and a former professional track and field athlete. I've dealt with a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, and I know the symptoms. There was a point in time in my life, and I talked about in my book Against All Odds, where I almost committed suicide, wanted to take my life, and I felt like that it was kind of area was so pleasing to do. But if I didn't think about my kids and the aftermath, the ripple effect of what could have happened, then I would have been gone, and I would continue on with that generational curse. But I deal a lot with student athletes, because there's so many student athletes that also deal with mental health issues, and I think it's important for all of us, on this panel, just to continue after this is all over. It's all said and done, is to keep the movement, and just to be able to voice our stories and our opinions, and come up with a solution, and to not get caught up in that role that society looks at, is that it is a stigma, that if you come out that you have mental health issues, that there's something wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with us. We're fine. Everybody deals with something in their life. So, but yeah, I'm just grateful to be here, and just to be able to share my story, be able to help whoever's in need with mental health issues.
Thank you, Tyree. Diana?
I work for an organization called TAPS, the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors, and we care for families of fallen military service members. So these are all children, adults who've lost a loved one in the military and are grieving that loss. So we have really taken this program that I started at TAPS 8 years ago, called Teams for TAPS, and built an opportunity to use sport as a platform for mental wellness, to bring joy to families, to create new memories. My father passed away when I was 13, so I understand loss and grief from a young person's perspective. My dad was a World War II veteran, and so what I've been able to create is bringing joy back into the lives of people who have suffered so much, and using sport as the platform to do that. Those moments, those memories that we can, the new memories we can make, the joy we can bring is tremendous. And also recognizing that athletes are people too, they're human. And when they do share that they're grieving or they're suffering or something's happened. It's given license to so many other people to be able to share. And I think that we need to continue to do that. I think that that has been a very healing way for our at least the people at TAPS to move along their grief journey. And I think that's true for many people. When athletes share, it really does make a difference. So I'm thrilled to be here, and thank you for having me.
Thank each of you for sharing your story. And my part in all of this and why I'm so passionate about mental health, and Tyree and Reggie, both of you know my story, but I grew up in a single parent home, very, very economically challenged. My mom had OCD. I grew up severely physically, sexually, emotionally abused, left for dead multiple times. I've been homeless. As a child, I was diagnosed with dyslexia. It wasn't until I was 48 that I was diagnosed with ADD and ADHD and all of the mental health issues that come with that. I'm also a single mom living in Milwaukee with 8 kids. So I think why I'm so passionate about this is people look at me and they say, well, you don't look like you have any problems. You don't look like you should, it looks like you have the world on a silver platter. And I say, no, I've been homeless. I've been on court-ordered probation till the day I turned 18. I know. And so I appreciate and value the 3 of your perspectives, and I appreciate you for coming in and sharing with our audience. Tyree, you said that you were in the NFL. I want to ask each of you a little bit more about your professional experience. Tyree, I know that at one point you were the fastest man in the world. Tell us a little bit about the mental health challenges, Tyree and Reggie, that came with pro sports and with your careers, if you don't mind.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's when you're that elite athlete. I mean, I know Reggie can relate to this, that you have the weight of the world on your shoulders, because in a sense, I mean, you got to go out there and do your job. You got to you do your best to try to block everything out, have that tunnel vision, that laser focus. But ultimately, you're trying to please everybody. You want to make everybody else happy, and which is impossible. And I think a lot of times, just like you were saying, Kayla, is that when people look at you, they see all your accolades, they see how you're good looking, whatever the outer appearance, and they think that you haven't had a hard day in your life. But to the contrary, that's not true. I mean, a lot of athletes, I talked about that stigma early, is that when you're like this elite athlete, people look at you as this gladiator. They look at you as almost like kind of this demigod, that you're indestructible and there's no type of weakness that you have. And coaches, they tell you that there is no weakness, but reality is there is weakness, and there's a lot that's brewing inside. I mean, there's a lot of negative emotions that are flowing. And I always talk about that when I was competing, is that I was just going through so much of my life, my personal problems of the federation. I mean, you got fans, I mean, you have everything. So everything's all inside. And a lot of that was like, there was a lot of negativity, and I was holding it because I didn't want to share, because it is a sign of weakness, because then coaches look at you like, well, you can't do your job. So if you can't do your job, then I may have to cut your contract, or I may have to, I may have to cut your contract, or I may have to cut you. And so you just conceal it. But it's like blowing up a balloon. That balloon can only hold so much air, and before it just pops. And you have all these emotions and you don't get them out. You don't talk to someone that has more knowledge and you, that more wisdom, is that little by little it starts to seep out, and you start to act out. And that you're acting out, and that may be suicide, it may be homicide, it may be on domestic violence, you go on an alcohol binge. I mean, whatever. So I think for me, it was important that I learned in my career that it was very healthy to be able to talk to my pastor, because my faith is I'm very strong in my faith with my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and to be able to get that help. But at times did I struggle? Yes, I still struggle, but it helped me a lot to be at peace and know that I had a lifeline. I had someone that I could be able to talk to be able to help me. Because I mean, we have to understand that just when we see someone act out, and I'm particularly talking about athletes, is that it's not acute. It just didn't happen like at that moment. It was brewing like a storm. A storm just it doesn't happen. It's been brewing for for a while before it just actually hits. So it's important for us just to be able to get open and be honest with our feelings, and not have to feel any, and not have to feel this, have this type of fear that there's backlash because somebody's going to attack us. And I think that's what it obsessed me with society, is that when I had a lot of teammates commit suicide, and they're like, well, why do they commit suicide? And it's like, why didn't they get open? Well, a lot of them, they wanted to get open, but then society's hammering them about their feelings. And it shouldn't be that way. You should be able to get open about your feelings and get help without any type of backlash. So.
Yeah, and Tyree made a lot of great points. I think that a lot of people don't really understand that when the environment that college athletes go into is so much different than high school. It's not just stress, it's toxic stress, meaning it's the type of stress that seeps into every part of you. It keeps you up at night. It has you to the point where you're barely keeping it together because, you know, you're 17, 18 years old, you just had a 10:30 curfew. Now you got to manage 2 full-time jobs on top of, now you're on TV, people are seeing you, everyone knows you on campus. Very few people can fully even relate to what's going on. And what I found was really brutal about the process is a lot of people who are really close to you, unless they have experienced in that environment, can't really help you that much. If your parent didn't play in college or ran track or whatever, they can't really fully relate to what's going on. There's a big time disconnect. So even when my parents were trying to give me advice on how to deal with situations that were presented to me, it turned out to, even though it came from the best intentions, it wasn't great advice. So it really puts you in a place where you're completely alone and in a box trying to figure this out. And then in this process, the higher you go up, the lonelier it gets. Because when I was playing professionally, very few people understood what I was going through. Even when I was trying to transition out, I felt even fewer people could understand. And then because a lot of people see the fame and the money that you get, they associate it to, you should be happy. Everything, that's what happiness is. You got a bunch of money, you got a bunch of fame, therefore you should be happy, you shouldn't complain. But the reality is you are in an island completely by yourself, and you just went through this extremely stressful situation that leaves a mark on you. And there's very few people who can relate to that. That's why a lot of athletes have issues with therapists. That's why a lot of athletes have issues with psychiatrists. There's very few people who can really get it. So getting the help that these athletes need to live great lives there's very few sources for that.
No, Reggie,
Go ahead, Tyree.
No, I was just gonna just comment about what Reggie just said. I mean, Reggie's spot on. I mean, and I think, Reggie, me and you both know it's that trust level. And a lot of times as athletes, if we can't trust you, we're not going to talk to you. And there has been a lot of betrayal with mental health workers and psychiatrists, that you open up about your true feelings, and then they go tell your coach, or they tell somebody within the organization, and now it's like you got this label on you that you're a head case, and like I said earlier, you can't do your job. And so that's why most athletes, just like what Reggie was talking about, we talk to each other because we can relate to each other. It's like we know that it's at some point our career is going to come to an end, and we're going to try to transition out. But it's like we're in that, like Reggie talked about, the island. We're on an island on our own. It's like we're in that bubble. But then it's like when we're done with that, it's like the stadium lights are turned off, and there's no more fans. No, there's no reporters. No going to red carpets. And now it's like you got to transition out. It's like when you go out and try to the world, to that civilian world, and try to adapt to it, it can be very difficult, because it's almost like you're speaking another language to them. They're looking at you like a deer in headlights. And that's what's difficult. And that's what I know personally I've experienced. I know Reggie's experienced, and a lot of our former teammates have experienced. And that's why, like I said, I always go back to the trust level is extremely important. I was on a call with Mark Sanchez in the clubhouse, And he was talking about this very same thing with just you're dealing with mental health, and if you talk to a chaplain or somebody in the organization, but they're untrustworthy, it can affect so many different things. It can affect you being on the team, if you're starting, your contract, I mean everything. But that's why we just hold it in, we conceal it, because we have families. We want to be able to provide for our family, put food on the table, pay our bills, and all those other things. But I'm so grateful now, and just like Reg, I mean, that we can be able to get open with our feelings, and not have to feel like not have to be able to have that backlash, and that it can be normalized. It's not this stigma anymore. So, but you're right on point, Reg. Right on point, Reg.
Yeah, to your points, I think there are certainly some parallels in the military of being in sort of a specific place, and then, as you were saying, transitioning out, and the invisible wounds. Nobody knows what you're going through. But I think what athletes have the opportunity to do is that peer-based emotional support. And I think that we're seeing it more, now coming out with players who are coming forward publicly and saying that they're struggling. And that gives license to other people to be able to share, but also the way you see players connecting. I mean, you see players coming up to each other on the field, on an NFL field, saying, I've got you, I know that. Or, NBA players who have both been very public about their invisible challenges that maybe nobody would say, oh, you're very successful, or you shouldn't have any problems. And no, there are those critical connections that I think athletes make, and only you understand what you are going through. So that's one of the core elements of the work that I do, is that peer-based emotional support, and it's critical to the journey. So I absolutely hear both of you loud and clear on that, and thank you both for sharing so much.
And
No, I
Diane,
appreciate it.
you bring up a great point, and Tyree, you'll be able to attest to this, having a military wife yourself. I think soldiers they have the same tunnel vision that the athlete has, right? And I think it's that tunnel vision that makes you great. But I also say, your greatest strength is also your biggest weakness. So whether it's in the military or being an athlete, and when I say athlete, I mean high school, college, or pro, because that mindset doesn't change to be the best, to say no to ice cream because you're counting your macros, whatever it is, to be so dialed in creates its own mental health problems. Am I right?
No, I think you're 100% right. I mean, it's like we're talking about, like my wife is in the Army. She's a staff sergeant and getting ready to be a staff sergeant. And it all goes back to leadership. And I think I was talking about that trust, is that if you have this NCO, this leader that basically you're looking up to, and if you're dealing with something, because just like what Reg was talking about, like when you're a high school athlete, you're 17, 18, you're going to a university, and it's just like a whole different world. And there's a tremendous amount of pressure on your back, because you want to go out there and perform, you're trying to start, and you want to be able to fulfill your scholarship. And a lot of times you may not have anyone to talk to. You may not have anybody to be able to understand. And in the military, it's the same thing, because since my wife's been in for a while, for many years, is that we've seen a lot of suicide, and heard a lot of soldiers commit suicide, and a lot of it is because they feel lonely. They feel they couldn't get open with their feelings about whatever they were dealing with. But that NCO, that NCO, their leader, is basically brushing them off. It's like, you got to suck it up. You got to keep pushing forward. And it's like, you can. I understand that. Yeah, when you're at war, you got to do your job. You're trying to survive. You're trying to take care of your brothers and sisters in arms. If you're on the field, you're trying to do the same thing. But when you get off of that, and you have all these emotions, all the stuff that you're dealing with, and you're trying to get open, they should be quick to be able to try to help you. And a lot of times that doesn't happen. And then all of a sudden then you get these soldiers and these athletes that get in a dark place. They lose hope, because I think hope is huge. Because once you lose hope, you feel like there's nothing. I've tried everything to my best ability. I've reached out. I've prayed or whatever. For whatever reason, that may not be working for you. And you end up committing suicide. You check out for good. I mean, there is there is no do-overs, there's no return. So we have to listen to these athletes when they come to us and they say that they're having they're dealing with a certain amount of problems in their life. I mean, and every athlete is different. I mean, it's not a cookie cutter. Like every other soldier is different. And a lot of a soldier told me many years ago that was a high ranking. He said the difference between how they were leaders to their soldiers underneath them is that the old timers, they got to know each and every soldier and about their, they got to understand, they have to know the husband, I mean, the wife, the husband, the kids, their careers and all of that stuff. Because if something popped off, they would know how to handle it. They would know the right thing to say, and they would know not what, and they would refrain from certain saying certain things that would just tick them off. So I think it's very important just to know our people, know these athletes, know their needs and wants, know what is going to elevate them and what's going to just bring them down, because the tongue is very powerful, because you can speak life into people, you can also speak death into them.
Yeah, but I think it's important too that a lot of people do understand that there is a significant amount of parallels between athletes and people in the military. When I was transitioning out, one of the most difficult parts were finding people who could really relate. And the people that I found that could relate the most to me were other athletes or people who served. And it to the point where it really baffles me. I know that there's merging vessel players, but there definitely is a lot of parallels and that need to be explored between athletes and people who have served, and helping each other really transition into regular life. And to a point that Diana was making, the peer-to-peer is so important, and I feel like that's such a vital element that's missing from college as well as professional in the transition, is that peer-to-peer support. Because I actually went and got my peer support specialist training, and I did it with veterans. And, that's why we were swapping stories, and it was just like sitting in a locker room. And that with the peer support specialist training, though, I thought it was just key. You help to form the community that's missing. You help give people jobs, and helping other athletes and helping other people in such a very difficult point in their lives. It's something that definitely needs to be more explored in a college area at least, but definitely in a professional as well.
Oh, Reggie, right. I mean, that's just, it's spot on. I know me personally, when I'm going through something, I reach out to my former teammates, and maybe my buddy Jay, play with the Chargers with, or whoever, or maybe a military, or maybe a soldier. And I live on base, so I deal with a lot of them. I see a lot of them every single day, and what they're going through. But yeah, you're right. The parallels are the same, and therefore they're more passionate to want to help you compared to somebody else that don't understand. They kind of want to just brush you off. And so I totally agree with that. They say like new levels, new devils, as you move up.
100%.
Diana, let's hear your comments if you don't mind. You're right in that military space, and Reggie and Tyree are giving great feedback, and you're right in the middle of it. Do you agree?
I think the peer-based emotional support on the family level is critical. And for service members, so at TAPS, we engage active duty service members and veterans to mentor bereaved military kids. So like Memorial Day weekend, for example, they'll come, and each child, there's 500 kids over the Memorial Day weekend in the non-COVID year. And so each kid is given a mentor, so as a service member for the weekend, sort of like a big brother, big sister. And what that does for the kid is it connects them into the military. After their loved one has died, a lot of them move off base. So it builds that connection, right? It's not peer-based because they do have other kids there, but it's that emotional support coming from a service member. However, for the 500 kids, there are 500 mentors. So they all have each other. And I'm sure both of you know in the worlds that you live in and are, in connections to the military, you're not going to find a service member who hasn't lost a battle buddy, or, you know, or hasn't lost somebody in combat to suicide or to illness. And suicide and illness are really very prevalent ways that we're losing our service members nowadays. So those connections that those mentors make, you know, and mentoring a bereaved military child helps them in their grief, because they're helping someone else. It's so much about helping other people. You know, one of the taglines we have is survivors helping survivors heal, right? So, you know, Reggie, Tyree, you've both, you know, I don't want to say you've survived your careers, but you have survived and you're thriving. And how can you help others? And how critical is that to use your platform as an athlete, to use your platform as a survivor to help others and also inspire others? Because there are, you know, kids out there who want to join the NFL, and kids out there who are trying to, you know, make world records and all that, especially with the Olympics coming up. It seems like everybody's trying to do everything and get their own Olympic challenges in. So they're looking at you as role models. And so it's important, you know, to share that, because not everybody, you know, the wounds, you know, and the challenges we have may be invisible, but it's so important that we share them so that other people, like I said earlier, feel licensed to do it too, and to get help. We have to be so aware of, you know, talking about people dying by suicide, whether it's the military, whether it's athletes, whether it's whoever it is. We have to make those changes. We have to be able to be there to help, to listen, to learn, to love. I pulled this virtual background from one of our suicide survivor events. We have a seminar just for survivors who've lost a loved one to suicide. It's like 10,000 people. So we have to be able to do that, and using your platforms the way you are is critical. But I agree that peer-based emotional support, you're gonna hear from another NFL player. I'm on the page with you, man. I gotcha. And Tyree, you're the same. It's those people who get it are the people who are going to be able to walk the journey with you, who've been down the road you're traveling. And that's all I have to say about that.
No, it's good. I mean, I love what you're saying, Diane, because I mean, you're spot on. And, you know, no one pops into this world, other mother's womb, and just becomes like a world champion, Olympic champion, a VP of a Fortune 500 company, or soldier, whatever. I mean, it takes a multitude of people to be able to help that person along the way to be able to reach their destination, reach that pit stop. Because I believe we have many pit stops in life, and I always say it's not about I or me; it's always about we and us. And that's what I always tell my young athletes, because you know, even though I've won many world titles, been the fastest man in the world 3 times, played NFL, I've done all this stuff, but I was on the track, but I couldn't have done it by myself. I mean, I had to reach out. There was many lifelines, and I always say I had many angels. We all have many angels that have come into our life at a certain point when we just felt like we were in that darkness. We were losing hope, and they were able to give us a hug. They were able to send us a text, a phone call, whatever it may be. And sometimes it's not all about, because with mental health, it's just that someone just, you know, that person that's dealing with whatever issues that they're going through, they want someone just to listen to them, just to listen to what they're going on in their life. I mean, and I tend to like to listen to a lot of soldiers and a lot of athletes that feel broken down, and there's a lot of them that are on television that you see. They're big name athletes, and the ones that are retired. So I think it's important that like you said, Diane and Reg, Kayla, that collectively together, that we're in this together. I mean, and we only have one life. We only have one world. We have to do our best to be able to help one another. And it doesn't really matter where you come from. It doesn't matter about no race and culture or how much money or professional athlete, whatever. I mean, it doesn't. And I completely agree that it's imperative. It's imperative that we use our platforms to be able to bring this awareness. I mean, I was on Kayla's podcast talking about this some time ago, but I just signed this deal to do a Netflix series, a movie about my life, or a documentary. They haven't decided, but I'm going to talk a lot about mental health because it's important. I want to use that platform to bring more awareness to be able to help people out there that feel like, well, I can't talk about my problems because how society is going to just blindside me, or they're going to hit me. Because I'm like, hey, if Tyree or Reg or Diane and Kayla can have these issues and they're talking about it, well, then, you know, then I need to get open about it. And they're gonna have more courage and not have this fear of any type of backlash, like I was saying earlier.
That's a great point, Tyree, and you make me think about, we're adults, but a lot of the people that are here watching and listening work with youth. And Tyree, I know the dad that you are. Reggie, I know the dad that you are. You two men seem to me to have this great desire to be amazing fathers. My question is, has the mental health battles that each of you fought, is it a determination to break that generational curse, as you would say, Tyree? Or is it just, you're gifted and you're acting the way that men should act? Where does the role of fathers play into mental health?
Well, I grew up without a father. I didn't have one, and I mean, thank God I had surrogate coaches that were acting fathers for me, and times when I was having back to school night or parent teacher conference, and I see all the other boys, they're running to their dad, showing them a report card or out there or talking about whatever they were doing in class. I didn't really have that. So for me, it's either you can go two ways. You can go two ways. I think somebody's at their mic on. Yeah, I think you can either go two ways. Either you can be that, I could be like the father I never had, or I could be this father that's gonna tell my boys, tell my kids that it's okay to get open with your emotions and your feelings without me giving them any backlash and calling them weak or other bad names. But I think that I don't try to be. I'm never going to be perfect. None of us can be perfect. I just try to get better at everything I do. That's what I always talk about. I tell my kids I'm very transparent with them, and they know a lot about my story and my deepest darkest secrets because I'm very open about that, very vocal. But yeah, I mean I want to break that generational curse. I want my kids to know that, hey, daddy's not perfect. Daddy went through some things. I've seen a lot. I've seen the death, the drugs, everything you can name. I've been through that growing up as a child, but thank God they don't have to go through it. But I want them, just like I said, to know that get open with your feelings, cry, yell, scream, do whatever you need to do to be able to feel good. And let's work on a solution to try to get better. Let's exploit your weaknesses and let's turn them into strength. Let's do all of that. So that's what I tend to focus on my kids. But yeah, Kayla, I definitely want to break the generational curse, and for not just my family, but for many other families out there, for many other boys out there that don't have a father, many other girls out there that don't have a father.
Yeah, and I think with when it comes to me and parenting, I really do understand that as parents we go through a lot of things so our kids don't go through them. And I've been very transparent with my kids, especially around the emotional issues I've had and some of the issues that they've had, because I just don't want them to grow up thinking they can't be or be a certain way for reasons that are really damaging to them, like it was in my situation. I'm very open with them, just like, but because I've had so many struggles and my kids have seen some of my struggles, like I had an issue with depression. I couldn't get out of bed, and I just couldn't get out of bed. I wasn't being a dad. I couldn't do anything. And then eventually I had to go to a treatment center. And then when I went to the treatment center, I remember it really fractured my relationship with my older daughter. And the thing that really saved our relationship is even better than it was before I went, was I talked to her about it. I told her, like, this is what's happened to daddy. This is what's been going on. This is why I needed to go away, because I needed to be a better father and I couldn't do it beforehand. Like, I told her what was going on. I sat down with her and I told her. She had questions, I asked them, I answered them. And I think it's very important that, as parents, and most people are going through mental issues, to just be transparent with their kids and sit down and ask their questions, because they're way more perceptive than we give them credit for. My daughters picked up things that I still to this day don't understand how they picked them up. But that's why you have to be open and honest with them, because we all have our struggles. And at the end of the day, it is about breaking generational curses. most households, and a lot of households, especially in the, minority community, Black community, they do go through having parents with emotional issues growing up that they don't take care of. I feel as if in the Black community, especially, mental health is like a curse word to some people. And it's something that, we're all here living, going through life. We're all struggling. And there's so many people not getting help because of that. And that's another reason why I even speak about my issues, that I'm so open about my issues, because it really does help, like, create a doorway for someone else. And at the end of the day, I want to open as many doors for people to get the help that they need as I can.
Reggie, thank you. Diane, I'm going to ask you to chime in. You have a whole different perspective working with the kids who've lost their parents. What's your take?
Yeah, working with children who've lost a loved one. I mean, I mentioned earlier that my dad passed away when I was 13. And so I've always sort of like thought about, for me, it was what could I do to make him proud, right? What could I do that would honor him? And so I've sort of always lived in this way of thinking that, dad would be proud if I did this. And it was, heartbreaking that he didn't see me, get married or meet my husband or my child or any of that. So in thinking about what would be meaningful for me now as an adult, that's how I look. I'm always 13 missing my dad, right? I'm not gonna suddenly, sort of grow on that or within that phase. But so I think about how our kids are impacted and what would be meaningful for them. And that's really the core of what I started with this program. I went to Afghanistan with the founder of the organization, and I was laying in my bed on base and thinking something needed to be born from this experience, right? You don't go to Afghanistan and go to Kabul on a boondoggle. So, what could be born from this? What could I create and bring back to the families that would be meaningful? And I started thinking about sport and the universality of sport, and said on the flight home to the founder, I want to start a sports program. And she said, great, go for it. And so that was April 2013. We launched in November of that year. But what I didn't realize was how many more men we were able to reach through the program, because men are not always, I mean, these two men are very in touch with their emotions and in touch with everything that's happening in their lives, but a lot of men are not. And so providing an opportunity for fathers, brothers, uncles, sons to be able to come and honor their loved one by going to, a football game of their loved one's favorite team was a really wonderful way to bring people in to get the grief support that they needed. So all of a sudden you have a little 7-year-old boy who's honoring his dad, and then you have his grandpa who's there honoring his son at the same game. And they're sitting there at first watching, oh, great, look at that. That was great. Oh my God, that was such a great, touchdown. This is so much fun. And then there's a moment where they, put their hand over their heart and the national anthem is playing, or they're honoring their loved one on the field. The NFL players wear initials of fallen heroes on their helmets. And all of a sudden it becomes this way that sport is helping this family in their grief journey, right? That same dad, maybe he's sitting next to another dad, right? They don't know each other, and they're watching the game too and enjoying that moment. And, one dad says, oh, did you lose your son? No, I lost my daughter. Was it suicide or it was a, plane crash, both in the military. And all of a sudden they've just connected, right? They've used sport as a platform to connect, and they're watching the game, but they're also talking about their loved ones. And before you know it, they're talking about the next event where they can bond and talk about their grief. But for the kids, seeing that there is an opportunity to celebrate the life and service is critical, right? I mean, when we have something that happens in our life, and we've all had someone in our lives that we've lost, right? The last thing you want to do is forget them, right? You want people to always remember them, remember that they lived. You'll hear someone, oh, how did they die? No, how did they live? We want to hear those stories about how they lived, and that they lived and that they served. So being able to do it in a space like, a basketball arena or a baseball field, and there's, you know, thousands and thousands of fans celebrating that little boy's dad, right? Or celebrating that you know, that surviving mother's only son. It's a way to bring that joy back. And so as a kid who lost my dad, who and I have a great sports story with my dad, right? It's actually related to Wimbledon, which is happening right now. And I'm a total Wimbledon junkie because of what happened with my dad in 1985, right? But, you know, because I had that was my way of saying, you know what, we have to make these moments happen. We have to, you know, our families wear photo buttons of their loved ones at events. It's almost like having them right there, because you think, oh, my dad would have loved this. My dad would have loved that I'm standing on, you know, I'm standing on the pitcher's mound, you know, in Camden Yards, or I'm, you know, right on the 50-yard line in, you know, at the, you know, at the Atlanta Falcons Stadium. So it's those moments, and if we can help make those moments, it helps along the journey for our kids.
Diana, those are great points. I'm gonna really be an instigator here, but I think we need to actually talk about issues in a safe place to really solve problems. So if this is a little bit tender for anybody, or anybody needs to step away, that's fine. If anybody gets angry at the question, I apologize in advance. But let's sort of end the systemic racism. Let's end the stereotypes that exist in our culture. And let me ask the three of you a really difficult question. Is mental health a race issue? Is it an economic issue? Is it your quote unquote weak issue? What's the answer, you guys? What are the real issues and what are the solutions?
Well, I mean, I personally think that I think it's all of those. I mean, depending on what culture that you come from, how you were raised, just like Reggie was talking about in African American culture. I mean, you were it's like whatever goes in the home stays in the home. I mean, and so I mean, no telling if there's violence or alcohol abuse, whatever. I mean, you have to just deal with it and suck it up. And but also too, I mean, you look on the race side of it, just dealing back with segregation and redlining and many other things. I mean, that's traumatic. I mean, that's gonna cause that's gonna create a lot of mental illness for a lot of people, because a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety, that you're gonna feel like you're not good enough. And I mean, I can take it way back to the time of indentured servants, where the whole the terminology black and white, where it actually came from. I mean, there's no black race, there's no white race. If you actually learn the history about, like I said, the indentured servants and how they came to the Americas, not to live a better life. I mean, it was more of like kind of division. I mean, there has been a lot of division with a lot of us, but the big scheme of things is that I just look at like people as people. I mean, my family is from the South, and there is some division there, how they look at other races, but for me, it's just coming off my own view of everything is that I mean, if we all cut ourselves right now, the blood's gonna be red. I mean, that's what it's gonna be. But is there trauma from racism, traumatic experience, PTSD, and all this? Yes. Is it from a cultural standpoint of what's going on in the home? That could be, you could develop PTSD. Yes. So I think it's a combination of everything. But at the end of the day, it's just about, like I said, it's about just loving people and trying to help one another and not try to pass judgment, because we can pass 1,000 people a day, and you don't really, I mean, and that, and maybe out of those 1,000 people, there may be like 700 are going through, or I should say all of them are going through something in life. But yeah, Kayla, I believe it's all of those, but it should be looked upon as something bad, that horrible because of what you experience. It's just that we have to learn to accept people and learn to work together, because when we're stronger when we're together. When we're divided, we're not strong. And that's what I tend to focus on, and then just try to help one another before the day I close my eyes for good. That's just me.
Thank you. I actually put in the chat what you said, Tyree, loving people, not passing judgment. I do think that is, part of the solution. Diana and Reggie, what do you guys think? What's the problem? What's the solution?
I think that, there are a lot of contributing factors to mental health. I do think, to Tyree's point, it's equal opportunity kind of situation. Everybody can have a challenge and have an issue, and some people handle it differently. But I think contributing factors in our society definitely make a difference. But to the points we've all made, I think the key is talking to one another, is not feeling alone, and making sure you have a community, making sure you have a peer, making sure you feel connected. Because when you're alone, it's the worst. But when you can have that connection, it's critical. And I think people using their voices, using their platforms, that's really what it's all about. And it's funny, Tyree, this morning I did a session, and I talked about together we can do so much, right? Together we can do more. Together we can support each other. Together we need each other, right?
Yep, we do.
The last year, one thing we didn't touch on is the pandemic. I mean, the mental health of our country is not so great. I worry about our kids. Going back to the last topic we touched on is, our little kids have been, this is how they did school, right? There's been no connection, right? They're talking about COVID babies who cry when anyone else holds them because their parents have been the only people who've held them for the last 9 months or 11 months or whatever it is. So I think we do need each other. And Tyree, to your point, that the connection is really critical, because we're all just humans, right? I mean, both of you were saying that earlier. We're just humans, and anybody can have a challenge. And the best way to do it is to talk, be open.
I would definitely say, there's a lot of contributing factors in this, but ultimately I feel it boils down to two things: relatability and getting the right resources to the right people. I feel as if in the athletic environment, college sports on up, there's just not enough relatable people, and the resources that are available to try to help you get through these issues are more band-aids than actual solvents. They don't really solve the issue. I feel as if it's too often that you're trying to get the help. You like in my situation, I was looking to get the help. I wanted to talk to therapists. I wanted to explore all the programs that are available, but none of them ever hit the mark. They were just there. And when you talk to the other people, when I talk to other players, they all said the same thing. I don't even talk to them. I don't even use that source. What's the point? They're not really trying to help me. Most of the help that I've gotten that's been the best help has been from former athletes themselves. And especially when it comes to just understanding how I think. And, there is a way, though, for people who weren't necessarily athletes to understand athletes, or even people who have served, in its empathy. Because too often when you're trying to help people, I felt as if, and many other people will say the same thing, that I'm talking to you and you're just trying to point out things. You're not really listening to me. You're just trying to say, oh, this was that, this was that, this was that. So now you're questioning my entire reality when I was in this environment for a decade. How are you going to tell me anything and you haven't even seen it? True. But when I talk to the people who just listened, they just listened. They tried to understand things how I was seeing them. That's when we actually had great sessions. That's when I was more open to the situation, to the session in itself. And it's, that would be a big thing to point out, is really focus on just listening and trying to see things through their shoes, because it wasn't what you think more times than not. So you just really have to keep your ears and eyes open.
No, I think you're right, Reg. I mean, I've experienced the same thing. And I think I think assumption has ruined a lot of relationships. It has ruined a lot of people, and it's caused a lot of division among people within our world. And if we would stop assuming things about the people instead of just getting to know them, and not look at everybody as like it's a fallacy. I think even what Kayla's talking about the whole racism is that in every race there's somebody that's going through something in their life. But I always tell people that, I talk about is a lot of people, they block their blessings because there could be somebody out there from a different race, different culture, whatever it may be, whatever you're going through, and they come into your life at that time. And if you're very closed-minded, you brush them away and you keep brushing them away, then it's like your opportunity then your chances run out, and it's like something bad's going to happen. So I think people have to be open-minded about just who they meet in life, and just not assume that something is bad or what they watch on television or what they read in a newspaper. Is get to know people, get to know them, and you might find out that that you may be talking to your angel. You be talking to your guardian angel, somebody that really wants to help you right then and there, and they may come in a different form. And because this happened to me. It's happened to me plenty of times. I was down on my luck when I was in junior college and frustrated. And I would go to Walmart, and I remember there was always this homeless man there. He was always there, never asked for money. And I remember the last time that I saw this gentleman, it always it's embedded in my mind like a tattoo. He said, "You never know when you're going to meet an angel." And I kid you not, I never saw that man again after that. Never saw him again. And it always stuck with me throughout the years, even during my career, is that I got to just be open, because I never knew who I'm going to be in my life, that male or female or whatever form. I don't care if you're a pro athlete, not a pro athlete. I don't care if you're homeless or not, that you may help me in my life. And so I'm going to be open. And I think that's what we have to be. That's how we have to view things as within our society, and look at people, is that just accept it, and that accept that not all people are bad.
Tyree, that's a great point. And, as we sort of wind this down and close, I want to first of all thank each of you for your perspective. You've really added value to this space. What I want to do is give each of you a moment to, first of all, let people know how they can collaborate with you. I'm going to ask the three of you actually to type it into the chat. I think for a lot of people, that's the easiest way to actually see it. And when you're done with that, I would just like to give each of you, I know you, I know what you stand for, what you believe in. I want to give you the opportunity to really speak hope and possibility and opportunity into the hearts of the people watching this who might be struggling with mental health. And I'll let you go. I'll let you guys do that in whatever order you want.
I would say if you're really struggling with mental health, the first thing that you need to do is really understand it's much, much easier to just talk to someone than holding it all in. Even, more times than not, count on most people not understanding it. But for you need to get it off your chest. And the more that you can get it off your chest, the less power it has over you. But you have to get it out. And if you're not getting it out, it's just going to keep burying you, burying you, burying you. And the other thing I would say is, don't run from your struggle. Don't run from your pain. You really have to sit in it to get through it. Sit in it objectively, really analyzing the parts as to why you are the way that you are. It really helps. But it is a very painful process. But it's a process that, if you really go down the road, you're going to come out a much, much better person. Much, much better person. And you can, in fact, live your life with a newfound strength that you never thought that you could have if you just sit in your pain. And I would say that if you also wanted to get a hold of me, I love talking to people about that. Like I said in the chat, just reach out to me on LinkedIn. That's the easiest way to get a hold of me. And thank you for having me.
Tyree, I'm going to save you for last, or I hope everyone's okay with saving you for last. I would say find someone to be your person. Find someone comfortable that you can find within your space to talk with. Whether it's a friend, whether you're calling a helpline, a hotline, whatever it is, but look within yourself and also, your expression. Are you, is it the best thing to get out into nature? Go for walks, do more for your self-care. That's something that we talk about a lot. Is it, are you a runner? Would it help you to go for a run and get that, and clear your mind? Is it talking to people? Is it painting? Find what that is, but really the core of it is making sure you don't feel alone and finding someone to talk to and someone who will hear you. Someone, very smart once said to me, sometimes you have to get so close to the edge of the cliff to realize you don't want to jump. And you should never do that alone. You should always feel that you have someone in your corner, someone by your side. And I hope that you do. And if you need any if you want to continue the conversation, I'll steal from Reggie. Get me on LinkedIn. I also put my my email address in the chat. But this has been a pleasure, and I'm grateful for being here. So thank you.
Well, thanks, Reg and Diane. I mean, you dropping the nuggets. I mean, it's just real, just authentic, and also just to kind of reiterate that again. There's nothing wrong with having mental health issues. It's not a sign of weakness. And to me, I think you're extremely strong. You're courageous when you can get open with whatever you're dealing with. It's very important because that's when the healing can start. And don't try to be perfect. Don't try to please everybody. It's not going to happen. There's 7.8 billion people on planet Earth, and it's impossible. Just try to get better at everything you do. And just like Reg and Diane was saying, is reach out to those lifelines. Anybody that you feel like you can connect with, your peers, or if it's somebody at your church, if you're spiritual, if it's a teacher, counselor, whatever, that is not going to be, that you feel they're not going to be judgmental. Just you get open with them, and so that way you don't harbor all those negative thoughts inside of you to where till you get to a point where you can't take it anymore, and then you go out there and you do something crazy. But you're awesome. I just want you to know that all you guys are awesome. You're amazing. You're beautiful inside and out. Don't ever doubt that. What God made is perfect. And like I said, just don't compare. Just stay in your own lane. Do what makes you happy, and give back to people. That's what's important. And I'm gonna leave you guys with this quote is that my coach gave it to me many years ago when I was struggling in my athletic career. They wanted to kick my butt out, like, hey, it's time for you to retire now, Ty. But he said, destiny can be delayed, but not denied. So we're all going to go through some things in life. We're going to go through a whole bunch of stuff in life, and it's going to slow us up for reaching our destiny, but it's never going to stop us from getting to our destiny. So God bless you guys all. And if you guys want to reach out to me, you definitely hit me up on Instagram, the real Tyree S. Washington. You can connect with me on LinkedIn at Tyree S. Washington. Go to my website, tyreeswashington.com, and check out my book, Against All Odds. It's been out for almost a year, and it's a great read for student athletes, for anybody. Talks a lot about my mental health, and I look forward to the upcoming future of my movie, Netflix series, a documentary. So I think it's going to be amazing. A lot of stuff I talked about. There's lots of things I didn't talk about that I'm talking about in my movie or Netflix series documentary that I didn't talk about in my book. But all in all, it's all about just giving back to people and just helping one another. That's what it's about for me. It's just passing the baton of positivity. That's all I want to do. I'm not that special. I'm just using my talents and gifts to give back.
Well, each of you have done a great job of creating hope and possibility in the mental health space. And I want to say thank you for that on behalf of the Sports Philanthropy Network. And at this time, I'd like to bring in one of our SPN interns, our host, handling the technology today, Ethan. Ethan, if you'll come on, tell us what college you graduated from, what you're doing with Sports Philanthropy Network, and sign us out if you don't mind.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for opening up during that session. I'm a rising senior at GW, and I'm excited to go back next year and finish out my undergrad. We have the closing keynote starting in a few minutes, and then another full day tomorrow. But thank you guys again, and hope to see you all soon.